Istanbul at night has its own rhythm. The city lights flicker, the crowded streets slowly empty, but the heartbeat of the city never fully stops. Yet that night, something felt different. Because somewhere, far from the noise and the spotlight, Can Yaman was attending a meeting that no one was ever supposed to know about. There were no photos on social media, no blurry paparazzi shots, not even a whisper in the press. And still, what happened that night would later leak out and spark endless questions. Why was it hidden? What really happened there? And who was he with? Can Yaman has always been a man under constant watch. Whether he walks down the street or boards a plane, the cameras follow him. Every step, every glance, every word becomes news. But this time, things were different. Because this meeting was not just casual. It was the kind of encounter that could change everything: his career, his public image, and maybe even his personal life. If it ever reached the public eye in the wrong way, the consequences could be devastating. That's why, on that night, Can moved like a shadow. No glamorous restaurants, no luxury hotels, no usual celebrity hotspots. The meeting took place in a quiet, old building, the kind of place no one would expect him to be. A place that whispered secrecy. But like every secret, this one could not stay buried forever. A few small details slipped out. At first, it was nothing more than whispers in the industry. Then came the social media speculation, endless questions, and finally, the truth began to surface. Can Yaman had a secret meeting that he tried to hide at all costs. Who was on the other side of the table that night? Why was it kept hidden? And most importantly, why is the truth coming out now? The answers to these questions take us deep into the untold story of Can Yaman's life, where ambition, love, and betrayal collide behind closed doors. At first, no one knew anything. The night passed like any other, the city kept moving, and Can Yaman disappeared into the shadows without leaving a trace. But secrets, especially in the world of celebrities, rarely stay locked away for long. It only takes one small slip, one detail out of place, for the whispers to begin. And that's exactly what happened. A fan account on Instagram posted a blurry photo of a man leaving an old building in the middle of the night. The caption was simple: could this be Can Yaman? At first glance, the picture was too dark, too grainy to be certain. But the outline of the hair, the way the man walked, the long coat he wore, it was enough to spark doubt. Within hours, the comments section exploded. Some swore it was him. Others said it was impossible. But one thing was certain: the seed of suspicion had been planted. The next clue came from an unexpected place, a waiter who worked in a nearby cafe. He mentioned, off the record, that he had seen a familiar face enter the building late at night. He couldn't confirm it directly, but the description he gave matched Can almost perfectly. Tall, with that unmistakable beard, moving quickly, as if he didn't want to be noticed, the waiter said. By then, the press had picked up the story. Tabloids began writing vague headlines: secret meeting in Istanbul, who was the mystery star? Even though Can's name wasn't directly mentioned at first, everyone knew who they were hinting at. And then came the most powerful clue, a short video clip recorded by a passerby. The footage showed a luxury car pulling up near the old building. The license plate wasn't visible, but those who followed Can closely recognized the car instantly. It was the same model, the same color, that he had been photographed with countless times before. The whispers grew louder. Social media turned into a storm. Fans flooded Twitter and Instagram with endless speculation, asking again and again, who was with him that night? Why was he hiding? The mystery spread like wildfire. It became clear, this wasn't just an ordinary night out. This was something far more delicate, far more dangerous for his image. And the question burned brighter than ever: who was waiting for him inside that building, and why did he risk everything to keep it hidden? The truth, as it slowly emerged, was far more intense than anyone had imagined. Behind those old walls, in a dimly lit room that smelled of dust and secrecy, Can Yaman sat face to face with someone he hadn't wanted the world to see him with. The silence of the place was almost oppressive, broken only by the faint ticking of a clock on the wall. Ken had arrived carefully, making sure no one followed him. His phone was on silent, tucked deep inside his pocket, as if even the vibration of a notification could betray him. This was not a casual dinner, not a friendly get-together, it was a meeting built on tension, unfinished conversations, and a truth that could shake everything he had built. Sources close to the situation would later reveal that the discussion was heavy, filled with pauses that spoke louder than words. Ken leaned forward at times, his voice low, almost urgent. Then he would lean back, running a hand over his beard, visibly conflicted. Whoever sat across from him wasn't just anyone. This was a person who had a hold over him, not in a professional sense, but something much more personal. The atmosphere was raw. Old emotions lingered in the air like smoke. It wasn't just business being discussed, it was the past, the choices that had been made, the regrets that still burned silently. There were moments when Ken's eyes softened, moments when anger flickered, and moments when silence fell so heavily that it seemed to echo through the empty corridors of the building. What exactly was said that night may never be fully known. Those who spoke later could only describe fragments, phrases about trust, about mistakes, about second chances. Enough to hint at the gravity of the encounter, but not enough to erase the mystery. And yet, what mattered most wasn't only what was said, it was the fact that Ken had gone to such lengths to keep it hidden. Why choose an abandoned-looking building instead of a private villa? Why leave without security, without his usual entourage? Why risk being seen at all? The answer seemed painfully clear, because this wasn't a meeting meant for the public eye. It wasn't about deals, scripts, or contracts. It was about something deeper, something he wasn't ready to share with the world. Something that, if exposed, could reopen wounds that many believed had already healed. That night, when Ken finally left the building, his steps were heavy. He glanced over his shoulder more than once, his expression unreadable. And though he vanished into the Istanbul night, the weight of what had happened inside those walls would follow him long after. For months, some would even say years, fans had speculated about the bond that refused to die between Can Yaman and a figure from his past. No matter how many projects he took on, no matter how many headlines linked him to someone new, the shadow of that connection never left him. And now, sitting in that hidden room, it became clear that this was not just about the future. It was about everything left unresolved in the past. Those who knew Ken well could always tell when his defenses slipped. His strong, confident image could dominate the screen, but behind closed doors he was still a man marked by choices, regrets, and memories he could never quite silence. And in that meeting, those memories came flooding back. The conversation reportedly turned to the kind of topics that hurt most, words left unsaid, promises broken, and the haunting what-ifs. For every moment of calm, there was another where the tension cracked through the silence. Ken's eyes would soften when old memories were mentioned, but the weight in his voice reminded everyone that forgiveness is not as easy as it sounds. It wasn't about business deals, scripts, or future collaborations. It was about hearts that had once spoken the same language, and wounds that had never fully healed. There was pain in the room, yes, but also something more dangerous, longing. A spark that neither time nor distance had managed to extinguish completely. And that's why Ken had gone to such lengths to keep it hidden. Because what would the world think if they saw him like this? Vulnerable, conflicted, face to face with someone who could still shake his entire world with a single look. To the outside, Can Yaman is the man who is everything: fame, success, adoration. But on that night, he was simply a man caught between the pull of his heart and the demands of his image. Those present later whispered that the most telling moment came not from words, but from silence. There was a pause, long enough to feel like an eternity, where Ken simply stared across the table. No anger, no defenses, just raw truth in his eyes. A truth that no camera had ever captured, but that one person in that room will never forget. That silence said it all: the past was not dead. The feelings, however deeply buried, were still alive. When the meeting ended, it wasn't with closure. It was with more questions, more uncertainty, and the kind of heavy silence that lingers long after two people walk away. When the door of that old building finally closed behind him, Can Yaman thought he had managed to protect the one thing he wanted to keep hidden. But Istanbul, like the world of fame itself, has a way of uncovering even the deepest secrets. And soon, the echoes of that meeting began to follow him everywhere. At first, it was whispers. Rumors shared among fans, quiet speculation in cafes, anonymous tips given to tabloids. But little by little, those whispers grew louder. Reporters began circling the places he visited, hoping to catch a clue. Photographers camped outside his home, waiting for a glimpse of anything unusual. Every glance, every step, every unexplained absence was dissected. The silence only added to the mystery. Can said nothing, denied nothing, confirmed nothing. And in a way, that silence was louder than any statement he could have made. Because in the world of fame, a denial is simple. But silence? Silence leaves room for imagination. It leaves room for truth. And so the world began to wonder, why now? Why was this meeting finally coming to light, after so much effort to keep it buried? Some claimed a close source had finally broken their silence. Others whispered that the person on the other side of the table wanted the world to know. And still others believed it was destiny. That no secret, no matter how deeply buried, can remain in the dark forever. What we do know is this: the timing was not an accident. Just as Can's career was reaching another peak, just as new projects were being discussed, the truth of that night surfaced. It was a reminder that no matter how far he runs, no matter how much success he gains, the past has a way of walking right beside him. And perhaps, more than anything, that is what makes this story so powerful. Because it isn't just about a celebrity hiding a meeting. It's about a man facing the truth of who he once was, and who he still might be. A man caught between the image the world demands and the heart he cannot silence. The secret meeting Can Yaman tried so hard to keep in the shadows is no longer hidden. The whispers have become voices, the mystery has become reality. And while we may never know every word spoken that night, what remains clear is the weight of it. The way it lingered in his steps, the way it haunted his silence, the way it refused to be forgotten. Perhaps that is the ultimate truth, that some meetings are not just about the present, but about the past that clings to us and the future we are too afraid to face. For Can Yaman, this was not just a secret. It was a moment where his fame, his heart, and his choices collided. A moment he wanted to hide, until now.